What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of the Bodybuilding and Business Podcast. I'm the host, JJ Richards, and today I'm very excited to introduce Richard Foster to the podcast, who is the owner and managing director of Strom Sports Nutrition and also show promoter.
Apparently so. Yeah, thank you for having me on. Just quickly, is this a visual podcast or is it an audio-only podcast?
It's visual.
Ideal. Good. Okay.
You should have done your hair and makeup, right?
Yeah. Well, I cut it all off today. I got pissed off with it. Yeah, I own Strom. Strom originally started out actually as a strongman promotions company. I am a part owner of FitX. Only a small percentage, but I'm involved with that with Darren. We were one of the first brands that got on board with that, and within business last year, before the whole world went to shit. Sorry, not last year. The year before I got involved with FitX. I had a kind of new policy in my head that was, you know what, just every opportunity that comes along, grab hold of it and run with it. So that's how we ended up becoming a part of FitX, or I became a part of FitX, and then Strom became so heavily entwined. I think that's it. I think that's what we are at the moment. Yeah, it's been a strange old year. Had to diversify as much as we possibly can. I think everybody has.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been good. For those of you who don't know, Strom is a sports nutrition brand, and we kind of, I think, earned our stripes, earned our niche in the market 4, 5, 6 years ago. We used to be just a normal retailer, and I started producing products to the spec I wanted for performance enhancing drug users, and we were one of the first companies to really openly say, hey, we know you guys all use gear. These are products for people that use gear. And I remember having a conversation with my mum about that, and her saying, like, you'll get run out of town, you can't do that. Because actually, if you go back just 5 or 6 years, steroid use was still quite taboo. You know, people like Croston and Rich Beyond were making a huge name just by being vaguely open about it. Absolutely. And actually everyone's very open about it now, but at the time, certainly companies very much like to portray themselves as whiter than white. And as someone who was a competitor at the time, I just go, look, we know what you do, these are products made for you guys. And it was a little bit of a risky move, but I think we probably got the timing right because people were very open and receptive to that idea. And it's kind of snowballed from there.
So just in regards to a bit of background about yourself, so obviously, you know, your time before obviously starting Strom, you know, what was your background before you kind of started going into the world of supplements?
All right, so no one's ever really asked me that. It's a little bit varied. I initially went to, I didn't finish school, basically. So I got no GCSEs or anything. I got a job at a sign makers, of all places, making graphics for vehicles, with a guy called Doug Hudson, who's he's a lifelong friend of mine now. And he very much taught me the value of hard work. It was his business, family business. It's been going for well over 100 years. They still do our posters and banners now. And he kind of drilled into me this idea that, like, if you want to do well with stuff, then you need to work hard when no one's looking. That's really the key bit. You know, anyone can post about how busy they are, but actually just grinding away when no one else gives a fuck. It's only you that it affects ultimately. So I worked there for about 1.5 years, and then I moved to North Wales to be an outdoors instructor, of all things, because I used to compete in kayaking at a decent level. When I was in Wales, I picked up an injury. I went to the gym to kind of try and fix that, and I enjoyed that a little bit more than I enjoyed kayaking at the time. And through a strange sequence of events, the opportunity came up. Basically, Wales' Strongest Man needed a host. And despite the fact that I had no experience, I seem to be one of these people that tend to gravitate to the center of groups, completely unintentional. So I ended up in this situation where people are going, hey, you do a bit of strongman. You're kind of shit at strongman, but you're quite good at organizing things. So do you want to have a crack at this? And I said I would, but I said that I would only do it if we could move the event to North Wales. It had always traditionally been in South Wales, and that caused a little bit of friction. I was like, but look, if you guys want me to run it, I don't live in South Wales. I don't know anything in South Wales. I'm going to move it up onto my turf. And we did that, and we got television coverage for the first time ever. And then we ran a competition with Giants Live, and that went really, really well. And entwined with that, I opened a supplement shop in North Wales. So this is kind of 2011, 2012. And that all tied together really nicely. We were limited at the time. Internet, social media and stuff wasn't really a platform for selling. And so most of my selling was done by going to events and pitching up a stall, that kind of thing. And there simply wasn't the population base locally to sustain that kind of business. So I ended up going into working in care homes with naughty children, and that took me out of North Wales. So I stepped away from running Wales Strongest Man after 2 years because it didn't make sense to run it if you don't live in Wales. And when I came to Shrewsbury, which is where I live now, which I was brought here by care work, I realized that, so I used to live in, I lived in Boston and Lincolnshire, and I've also lived in North Wales, but I used to go to Wrexham. And I think in Wrexham, there were 3 or 4 supplement stores. In Boston, where I was from, there was 2 or 3. I used to go to Lincoln a lot. There were 4 or 5 supplement stores there. And I came to Shrewsbury and there was nothing. And there was nothing in Telford, which is the next town over. So I decided I'd pull Strom back out of retirement. And that kind of leads us up to where we started in a roundabout way. And we were just a normal retailer. For quite a while, we were just a normal retailer, but I was competing in bodybuilding at the time and became very frustrated at how detached a lot of companies were from the reality of the sport. We've got fantastic companies in the UK now. We've got brands like Supplement Needs, Insight Supplements, HR Labs, Trained by JP, loads and loads of brands that are made by athletes for athletes, and they give a fuck about what goes in. That wasn't the case then. There were still companies selling, you know, BCAA capsules and different forms of creatine, and the market was full of a lot of shysters and snake oil salesmen. And as an athlete, that annoyed me because I just wanted good shit for myself, you know. And that's all it was going to be. It was just going to be, you know what, let's get some small runs made of the stuff that I want for me and my mates. And I suppose we hit the right place at the right time because it exploded. I think because I get a lot of people message me. It's a bit weird. I don't know. I wouldn't message a builder and say, hey, I want to be a builder. How do I do your job? But I do get a lot of people message me say, hey, I want to open a supplement store. I want to start a supplement brand. And much as this sounds a little bit condescending, I don't think that if I did the same thing now, it would work. Okay. Because the sector that we've created, i.e. that kind of very specialist, hardcore consumer sector, is now quite saturated. You know, it didn't really exist before. So we had a huge leg up because no one was making products for the guys that kind of, you know, I felt like it. I don't know about yourself, but, you know, I used to go to places like Body Power, and over time I felt like the industry had forgotten about us. You know, if you were a proper bodybuilder at that time, you weren't catered for. Whereas actually, I think now we're in a much better position as an industry as a whole, and also as a subculture of the kind of the bodybuilders, the powerlifters, the strongmen, the people who take it really, really seriously. There are a lot of really good options out there for us now. Absolutely. So a question I'm keen to know is, where did the name come from? Where did Strom come from? So it's an old Norse word for kind of strength or power. Okay. And basically I needed, for the first strongman competition, I needed public liability insurance. Okay. And when I tried to get it as Richard Foster on running a strongman competition, it wasn't that they said you couldn't do it. It's just that the broker I spoke to seemed a little bit uncomfortable, and it just seemed easier to have a name. Yeah. So that was kind of where Strom came from. It's really nice, actually. In the last 2 or 3 years, people know the name Strom. Absolutely. And I don't have to correct them. But for years, people would call it Storm. Okay, yeah. Or would tell me that I'd spelt the name wrong. But, you know, I guess it's become known, which is nice. Yeah, absolutely. So where was the inspiration then to bring up your first products? Obviously, you had, you know, a shop where you were selling other people's products. Where did it come from? So I actually used to be sponsored by a company called Bodytronics, and I don't think they'll give a fuck about me saying this, because Bodytronics got absorbed by a big company called MP Bioscience. But when they were Bodytronics, they'd asked me over to do some consulting, and I went with Andrew Keeler, and they said, what kind of stuff would you like to see as athletes? And we said, we'd like an EAA product. Yeah. We would like a stimulant-free pre-workout. There was very little on the market then like that. And I talked about at the time, the concept hadn't fully formed, but like a general health supplement, kind of a list of stuff that I took for health. It was what ended up being Support Max. Yeah. The EAA product, they said that it didn't have any relevance. They didn't see the point, and they still don't sell an EAA. Okay. It was one of those ones where, like, you know, you ask us to come and help, and actually they just wanted to show us a fucking low carb whey they'd made, and for us to get excited about that. They said that there wasn't a market for stimulant-free pre-workouts. Okay. And that the health product there was no margin for. So I think at the time generally speaking, if a product was going to retail for 30 quid, you needed to be able to wholesale it for like a tenner.
Yeah.
So that like your manufacturer would wholesale it for a tenner, and then your distributor would wholesale it for like 14 quid maybe, and your retailer would get it for kind of 14, 15 quid plus VAT. And then there was this idea that if it was a 30 quid retail product, it would probably get marked down by maybe a fiver, which meant that the manufacturing cost had to be, enough for the manufacturer to make money.
Yeah.
So you might end up paying, if a product was going to sell for 30 quid, you might look at between £4 and £6 of ingredients in it.
Okay.
Now, as an athlete that was buying these things, I was pretty fucking annoyed at that concept. So Support Max, the very first batch of Support Max, I think we made 40 pence a tub.
Okay.
When I pitched it, people said that I'd lost my mind. And we still make very, very little money on Support Max. Obviously, economies of scale make it a little bit better. But having things like the Tubka in at the doses that they're in and citrus bergamot, it's a hard product to make money on. But what it is a halo product. So people buy that and go, hey, you know what? I really like that. That's a really good product. I'll grab my pre-workout from these guys as well. I'll grab my creatine, something that's got a bit of margin in. Whereas actually back then, the industry used to work on a very linear, if this is what it costs, this is what it has to sell for model. And when I tried to pitch this product, I think I pitched Support Max to 3 brands. Because I didn't want to have a brand. I just, I like the idea of having a juicy sponsorship deal and maybe doing some formulating for someone else and not having any of the risk, because I'm just a supplement geek at the end of the day. I think I pitched it to 3 brands and was consistently knocked back. You can't make that because there's not enough margin in it. So we have no distributors. We get the products manufactured, they come to me, and then we distribute them and direct retail them. Okay. So we can get away with having little to no margin on certain products and then make it up with other products. Because ultimately, again, we just wanted decent stuff. Now, actually, you can spend £120 a month on the advanced health stack from Supplement Needs. But again, 5-6 years ago, people didn't take anything on cycle. Or they'd take milk thistle or live 52. So my only priority with that product was, let's get the guys to take something that's going to help and get people talking about health and on cycle support. And it was the first kind of really efficacious product, and it still sells. It's still our best seller. But that was kind of how we started in that, was just, I wanted someone else to do it, quite frankly, and no one wanted to pick the idea up. So VascuMax was the first product, because actually VascuMax wasn't massively expensive to make, so that was less of a risk. And when that went okay, we then did StimuMax, and then we did Support Max. So those were the first 3 products.
But obviously you've grown quite big since then, so you obviously got quite a good range of products on the market at the moment. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know where we stand in kind of national rankings of independent brands.
Sure.
I think me and Lee from Supplement Needs are quite close. And I know that me and Lee are similar sizes in terms of brand growth and numbers. And me and Lee have got a really good relationship, which is great. Traditionally, there's been a lot of rivalry within the industry among brands. The way I see it is every brand that wants to make good products is one more brand producing things that consumers buy, use, and go, hey, I bought a supplement for X, Y, or Z, and it did what I thought it was going to do. Every single consumer buying a product that's crap is one more consumer going, oh, I bought supplements before they're dog shit.
Absolutely.
So, brands that do the right things, I want to work with those guys. So I don't know exactly where we stand in the kind of league tables. I think it's probably fair to say that we are, or I am, the biggest brand in the UK that is a sole trader. That's quite unique about us.
Absolutely.
I don't know how much you talk on this podcast about actual logistics of business, but I operate as a sole trader.
Okay.
Basically, because my mum told me years ago, you can't have a big business as a sole trader. And I wanted to prove her wrong. And now I've been a sole trader for so long that changing over to being a limited company would be a pain in the ass.
Okay.
So I just run with it. So I assume you're familiar with the differences, but for those who maybe aren't, that are listening, if you're interested in business stuff, most companies operate, that have got staff operate as a limited company. And what that means is that the owner of the company has limited liability. So if that company takes out a load of debt on product and they go bust, the owner isn't directly responsible for that debt. And that's where the term limited comes in. As a sole trader, I'm responsible for every single gram of debt that the company has. At the moment, we have none, which is great. And it also means that every penny of profit is mine. So effectively, the way it would work with a limited company is that the company does its tax return, they pay corporation tax, and then you pay your wages out of that through either a payroll or a dividends, and you would pay income tax on that. Whereas as a sole trader, the company turns over this amount of money and it spends this amount of money on stock and rent and overheads, and the figure that's left at the end is your profit, and you pay your 20% VAT on that, which is VAT registered, and you then pay your income tax at the appropriate rate on that. But we, quite uniquely for a sole trader, we have a payroll, we're VAT registered. So it's a little strange. It's a bit strange about the setup of Strom. It's something that that still confuses a few people, but it's something that actually you can do to quite a large level. You know, there's a lot of builders and stuff that have grown very big as that. The only thing that it causes me a problem with, I guess, is if I ever wanted to sell the brand. Yeah, you can't, because I'm the brand. So you would have to incorporate, and then it becomes a little bit more complicated. Okay,
so what is the kind of infrastructure then for Strom? Because obviously you don't do everything yourself, do you, in regards to marketing, sales, logistics? Do you have people?
I mean, I pretty much do.
Okay, fair play.
I'm a control freak.
Yeah, okay.
Massive control freak, yeah. So every single product is formulated by myself. Now, we use an ISO 9001 registered and audited facility for our manufacturing. ISO 9001 audited facilities are a little more expensive than a generic facility. But what that means is that every single batch has traceability. And if there's ever a problem with a product, it's at the risk of sounding a little blasé with it, it's the factory's problem, not mine. They've got that legal responsibility to ensure that everything is done to a certain standard. Marketing and stuff, so I've got a girl called Evelina, she's a freelance graphic designer and chiropractor, so she does some work for us, and she does like our infographic and stuff. Yeah. But in the early days, I've spent money on paid adverts and newspaper adverts and all sorts of things. Basically, I just chat shit on Instagram and podcasts now.
It's the way forward, isn't it?
That's all I do. Yeah. In terms of logistics, we've got a unit on an industrial estate in Shrewsbury. We've got APC, our logistic company, over there. You know, parcels are packed. Obviously, we've got payroll and stuff, so we do have staff that pack parcels and things. But in terms of the overall running of the business, yeah, I pretty much do all of it myself. And I'm probably approaching a point where that can't continue much longer. Yeah, but at the same time, a year ago I felt that, 2 years ago I felt that, and you find a way, you find the hours in the day, and you streamline processes.
When was the last time you went on holiday?
Well, I think it's been a while for all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But actually, so 2018, 2019, I had my first holidays, all of which were working holidays. Like I went to Sweden with Monster for work. I went to the Isle of Man TT with Monster for work. I went to Ibiza. All of those were working holidays, I guess. None of them were like, I just go and sit by the beach. But they were my first holidays for, I think, 8 years. Okay. Certainly for the first 4 years, I didn't have any time off. And for the first year of Strom in its current iteration, I actually had another job working for Sky TV, and I had another job doing freelance debt collecting. Okay. And I didn't have a day. I worked 7 days a week for just over a year. And I couldn't do that now. But at the time, it's strange. I can look back at when things were in their infancy, and kind of I'd wake up every morning, I'd kind of jump out of bed and be ready to go. Yeah. And I guess I don't know if I'm older and more burnt out, or if it's just that when you've got to a certain level, that kind of hunger drops off a little bit. Okay. But if somebody's got that about them, it doesn't last forever. So, you know, use it. If you can apply that in a positive sense, then fantastic. Ride it while you can, because it won't be there forever. Absolutely. So you seem very driven, and obviously what you've achieved is proof of that drive. So what is the motivation behind the drive and the success of Strom? We were poor as fuck as kids. Yeah. That's it. Like, I grew up going to, my mum used to sell wool on a market. We used to, if you wanted a bath, you had to light the fire, and there was a back boiler on the fire, and that would warm up the hot water in the house. And then, so I used to live between my mum's and my dad's. So, okay, you know, separated parents thing. My dad didn't have a car, so he used to drop us off at school. I used to sit in the basket on the bike. My sister would sit on the kiddies sit on the back, and I had to sit on the basket. And my family were all very hardworking, but growing up, we didn't have a lot. Not like a woe is me thing. It just taught me that because my dad does well now, my mum does well now. Both of those people have done well, despite coming from very little, by grafting. Yeah, you know, no one's going to do it for you. So that's just something that was ingrained into me, is if you want to do well, you need to crack the fuck on. And even if you don't do well, you'll do better than if you hadn't cracked the fuck on.
Yeah, because I may be wrong, but I've followed you for quite a long time on social medias. You don't come across like you're a very materialistic person. And sometimes a lot of people that come from, less privileged backgrounds, when they've got money, they buy all the stuff they want. But I don't really see that so much of you on social media.
I'm glad you said that.
Because you do.
I do. No, I do. But I don't show it on social media because I think it's cringe as fuck.
Absolutely.
I like, not to be crass, I do okay. I like nice cars. I've got a real thing for cars, actually.
Yeah.
Anything that's fast, basically. But I think it's really cringe to show it, because you know what? Not everyone will be doing brilliantly. You might not always have it. There's that kind of opening yourself up for a fall. But also people can be. I've got a friend who's done very well recently, and he's got a nice car and stuff, and I'm super pleased for him. But I also know there are other people that have gone, oh, fucking how's he got that, and have been dicks about it.
Yeah.
And I'd rather just, you know what, I'll do what I do. And like when we moved from a shop to an industrial unit, I think some of the people from the town that I'm in, maybe they're a little bit small-minded, thought that we were doing that because we couldn't afford the shop anymore.
Yeah.
They kind of came, oh, are you doing okay? And I was thinking, I think we tripled turnover that year. That's why we moved to an industrial unit.
Yeah.
Because the business from the retail in the shop wasn't worth the time of the day that it took versus doing wholesale and mail order. But you know what, if that's what people want to think, fine. You're far less likely to get someone trying to trip you over if they think you're struggling than if they think you're doing really, really well. In terms of approach to business and life, though, I have no intention of, like my grandparents, bless them, they worked till they're like 65, 70. Yeah. I have no intention of working until I'm 70 years old. None whatsoever. So the way I see it, and this might sound ridiculous to people who actually know about economics and business and stuff, but the way I see it, for me to retire, I need a certain amount of money or assets, or a business that provides a passive income. Yeah. To get that, I'm going to have to put a certain number of hours in. I don't know what that might be. It might be 10,000 hours. It might be 30,000 hours. It might be 40,000 hours. It might be 50,000 hours, whatever. Every day off I have, every evening I can't be bothered, every weekend I have away, are hours that I haven't put into that piggy bank. So the sooner I fill that piggy bank, the sooner I'm done.
I like that. That's a great mindset to have. I really like that.
And if I'm still working at 60, this is not going to have looked good.
Yeah, okay.
This isn't going to hold up well. Yeah. But that's the approach that I take. And you know what? I'm not very good at taking time off. There are several people close to me that have said, oh, if you do ever actually manage to retire, you'll just die.
Yeah.
Because you won't know what to do with yourself. And they're probably not wrong. But
so in regards to your personality, are you quite hyperactive? Do you have quite an active mind that you've always got to kind of stimulate that?
I believe the term is spectrum.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I diagnosed Asperger's.
Okay.
Which is something that I only spoke about on social media maybe a year ago. It's not something I'm embarrassed about, but it's also not something that I want special treatment for, because as far as I'm concerned, it just means that I look at things a little bit differently. And there are certain things and certain topics that if I become obsessed with them, which I can, and I occasionally have to remind myself that, that thing isn't the most important thing in the world and to pull away from it. But if I get obsessed with making a product the best I can, or finding the best way to improve a mechanism behind an ingredient, then I can do that more efficiently and with more focus than a normal person.
Absolutely.
And the flip side is that occasionally I'm incredibly rude without realizing I have been. But people who know me know that, and they get used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the benefits of that, and that's probably why your supplements are as good as they are, because of that reason. So
yeah, like I said, when we did the bulk of the formulating, that is all I would do, is I would read studies and research papers and all sorts of bullshit and anecdotal stuff, and speak to people, until the small hours of the morning. So yeah, I become very obsessive with things, and I think you've just got to spin that into a positive.
Absolutely. One of the questions I was interested in is, I've obviously read a lot of your content recently, and I've followed you for a number of years as well. And you're very educated in the supplement world. And now that the supplement world has grown and grown and grown into obviously all the health products and stuff, it's a minefield. But you're able to kind of dilute that and then kind of speak about it in a way that anybody is able to understand it. Because I don't like people when they talk and they use lots of big posh words to try and impress people with their knowledge. But I always say that the people with the real knowledge are the ones that can make something really complicated, but articulate in a simple way. And that's something that you do really well.
If you can't explain something simply, there's a good chance you don't understand it. Now, there are exceptions to this. So if you've got Joe Blogs PT, and I apologize if there's a PT called Joe Blogs.
I'm sure he gets hounded all the time.
Oh, excuse me. He starts talking about activating your parasympathetic nervous system post-workout. Then he's being a dickhead.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that he's wrong, but he's trying to show you how clever he is, and no one gives a fuck.
Yeah.
You know, it's great. And if he wants to understand these words and these terms, great, fantastic. But actually your consumer, your client, whether you're a supplement product or what, they don't care. They don't need to know that. The flip side to that is someone like Dr. Dean, who you're probably familiar with.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Dean's an actual doctor. So if he wants to talk in big words and make things very complicated, I'm all for that, because he's actually qualified to do so.
Yeah.
You know, he speaks from a position of authority. But actually, and that's what he is. He's Dr. Dean, the biochemist. But if you're a PT, your job is to communicate information to your clients in a manner that they can utilize. And I think as a supplement provider, I'm not trying to explain my products to Dr. Dean, because if I have a private conversation with Dean about the mechanisms behind a certain product, it might be a very different conversation to the one that I would have on social media. Absolutely. The conversation that I'm having on social media or on YouTube or even face-to-face with the customer is trying to communicate as efficiently as possible to the customer what that product's going to do, how it's going to do it, and whether it might be right for them, or a steroid, or, you know, I talk about lots of different topics.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand your audience. You know, that conversation is to benefit them, not to stroke my ego.
Yeah.
And I think part of that comes with age. I've been in the industry now. I've been training for 17 years, and I've been in the industry, and some guys or another, for 10 years.
Okay.
I don't feel like I need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I saw on a thread the other day somebody stating that you can't improve muscle protein synthesis. Somebody asked about products that could improve muscle protein synthesis. A few people made some suggestions, and someone popped up and said, "Oh, you can't increase muscle protein synthesis, and anyone says that you can is talking shite." And I said, well, actually you can, and here's some mechanisms as to how that can happen. The primary one being anabolic steroids. You know, they increase nitrogen retention and dramatically increase muscle protein synthesis. That's what they do. It's like, no, they don't. You don't understand the mechanism. And I just said, okay, left it at that.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of people message me and say, "Oh, so and so's ranting at you about this." And I was like, whatever. It doesn't make any difference to my day.
Absolutely.
You know,
they just want a reaction anyway, and they just, yeah.
It doesn't matter how well you present your argument with some of these people, particularly on social media platforms. You could prove unequivocally that you're right, and they won't admit it. They won't see your point of view. So why waste your time a day?
So in regards to your experience, obviously you've got the education and the science aspect, but you've also got the application aspect as well. And some people are very sciencey, and some people are very based on application of what they've done themselves.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're able to use both, but how much of it is science and how much of it is based on your experience and your application?
I have self-experimented with basically every compound you can get. I've definitely bordered on, because I can become obsessive. I have been very big as a bodybuilder. I was 130 kilos leanish.
I saw the picture that you sent me. It was impressive.
Yeah, no homo. And you know, I did stray into that area that was abuse. And I think at the moment, people maybe underestimate the importance of that applied knowledge. You know, I can certainly put together things that I've done in the past in terms of, because I used to keep meticulous logs of things I've done in terms of drugs and nutrition that work really, really well, that make you feel like absolute dog shit. And also, I could suggest something really, really basic that most people would go, what is that it? That actually will yield really decent results over a period of time.
Yeah.
In terms of my approach, I try and balance balance the two. Don't always get it right, but I'm very fortunate to have access to athletes at a very high level in pretty much every field. You know, IFBB pro bodybuilders that I'm quite familiar with, professional powerlifters, absolute top level strongmen, and all of those people are willing to have quite open and candid conversations. And what you'll find quite often is you have someone who feels that they're very not science-based. They just, oh, this is just what I do. And actually, when you break down what they do and you have a conversation with them as to why they do what they do, unknowingly or not, quite often they're doing things absolutely correctly, just purely by coincidence. And sometimes they're not. But if you look at the best of the best, there are traits that that they all seem to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm quite interested to know is obviously developing a product. So I imagine the first time you did it, the process was a lot longer, and now you've probably kind of got a bit slicker. So talk through the process of you sitting there and thinking, do you know what, I want to bring out this product.
Yeah.
And then what that kind of process looks like to then having it on your website for someone like myself to be able to go on there and buy.
You know, it really varies. It really varies. And that's because of a few things. So the simplest product that we do, probably something like Creamax. It's Creapure and Actigen. That's it.
Yeah.
So a product like that, I didn't need to flavor test it or taste test it. We know the ingredients work. We don't even need to get an athlete to trial it because we know what it will do. So all we had to do with that was design a label, speak to Creapure and get a license. So that's Outchem in Germany. Speak to New Life Science and get a license for Actigen, because it's important actually that if a company's using these ingredients, they have the licenses for them.
Yeah.
Work out costing and produce the product. That was it. So that whole process probably took 8 weeks, of which 5 weeks was waiting for Outchem to sign off on the license. Now you've got a tub of, I can see that's first gen Glycomax.
It is, yeah, old school.
Because we've got the fluted neck on the tub. A product like Glycomax, that had to go through quite a bit of prototyping, because it's all well and good looking at what works on paper, but if you give that to people and it gives them stomach cramps, as it can do if you use too much chromium, or it gives them diarrhea, or it sends them hypo, or it's not effective, that can be really tricky. So we actually had about 10 or 11 different versions. Okay. And we had 3 athletes, one of which was William Carver, who have basically, I got a group of people that I trust that at the time were very much monitoring their blood glucose meticulously. And we would introduce the product alongside a set diet and measure the results and kind of whittle it down to our top 1 or 2 formulas and then work out costings and capsule sizing and all that. And that process probably took 4 or 5 months. Okay. And then actually we found after about 9 months that the dose of cinnamon in the original version was too high, not in terms of the effectiveness of the product, but it gummed up the capsule machine. Okay. So we changed after that version, we changed from using 1,000 milligrams of cinnamon extract to using 500 milligrams of a patented version called Sinulin, which is a water soluble cinnamon extract, which effectively gave us the same dosing, the same efficaciousness, but it didn't gum the capsule machine up, so we could produce more in the same time frame.
So well, I was going to ask, in regards to obviously all the products that you've released, what's been the biggest challenge you found, or the biggest barrier to releasing a product?
The original Support Max, getting it to a point where we could not make money on it, but just afford to do it, was difficult. Originally, the product spec was 500 milligrams of Tudka. Okay. And it's not, it's 250 milligrams of Tudka, because 500 milligrams of Tudka, we would have had to have priced the product at like £49. Yeah. While that would probably sell now, in the marketplace at the time, that wouldn't have worked. So we got the first batches made and we ran blood work. So we have the Hench project here. We can do blood work pretty regularly. So again, we got people that would have blood work done on fairly recently. We got them to use the product with the 250 milligrams of Tudka. And we actually found that the 250 milligrams of Tudka, of the type of Tudka we use, synergistically with the 1,000 milligrams of NAC-L-cysteine, actually yielded a really good result, perhaps more so than we expected from just 500 milligrams of Tudka on its own. But that was one that took quite a bit of, it was very difficult to get that just right, that balance of efficaciousness and productness, efficaciousness and affordability. Sure. One of the biggest problems we have is compliance. So we've had trading standards make us stop selling a product before because somebody told them there were amphetamines in the original Stimumax. So they came into the shop, they made me shut the shutter, they made us switch the website off. And they said, we're taking these products for testing. And so I was like, well, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing in them. But actually, I then spoke to my solicitor. I spoke to the factory, and we got all the paperwork and all the proof and the licensing and so on for the product, sent it over to trading standards. I actually went over to the council offices the same day and said, look, you've told us to shut our website because you've been told this, but actually, we're a legitimate business. This is all our paperwork. So if you want to do that, that's fine, but you need to have some evidence. Now, it turned out that someone had just rung up the council anonymously. And it amazes me that you can do that. Like if I rang up the council and said Holland and Barrett were putting D-bol in the protein, I can't imagine they would shut Holland and Barrett down. But as a small business, you're a lot more vulnerable to that kind of thing. And then you also get issues with ingredients that were fine then becoming not fine. So the original Stimumax had an ingredient called amp citrate. What was the chemical name for it? I think 2,5-methapentamine citrate, something like that. But it was a good stimulant. It's a novel stimulant, short acting, hard hitting, lasted for about an hour and a half. That was in the original Stimumax, and that was great. That got made non-compliant. It got banned, which meant we had to find a replacement. And finding a replacement that feels as good was very, very difficult. And the regulations are getting tighter and tighter and tighter all the time. And I'll regularly get people say to me, oh, why don't you use this ingredient? Why don't you use that ingredient? And I'll have to say, oh, well, I can't because that ingredient's not compliant, or it's in breach of novel food regulations or something. Where that becomes tricky is then people go, oh, well, so-and-so brand, quite often a brand that trades online, has no physical location, and no one actually knows quite where it's from, uses it. And, much as I'm pro deregulation of pretty much everything, we have to follow the rules. And if someone's working out of their bedroom, they don't have to, because no one's going to catch them. And certainly in the realms of things like pre-workouts, there are things like 1,3-dimethylalamine that used to be in Jack 3D that we all know is fucking brilliant, but I can't use it, and I can't resent a small brand for using it because they can get away with it, because you know what, if I was that small brand and get away with it, you probably would as well. But it makes it very difficult for us to compete on a fair and level playing field. So that's a challenge.
So when it comes to obviously dosing a product, because like you mentioned, the supplement industry in whole is massive. Like in some areas it's massively saturated, and like you said, the area that you're now in regards to more focus on the health products, that's now more saturated than it was when you started. So obviously when it comes to getting that perfect formula right of how much to put in, because like you say, you might have a product that's got 250 milligrams of Tudka in it, then somebody else might bring it out and go, well, we've got 300 milligrams. But then at what point, I understand obviously margins is something, but at what point is like more not effective? So I know a lot of people say, the difference, it gets to a point when you're taking testosterone that more isn't always better. How do you know what that point is when it comes to formulating a supplement?
It very much depends on the product and the mechanisms involved, There are some things where more is better, and there are other things that aren't. So anything that's a nitric oxide precursor, like citrulline, people think, the more citrulline malate, the more pumped you'll get. So citrulline, for those who don't know, converts in the bloodstream to arginine. Arginine produces nitric oxide, and nitric oxide is what gives you a pump, or one of the factors that gives you a pump. As your body produces arginine from citrulline, it also produces an enzyme called arginase, and the function of arginase is to break nitric oxide back down. So in a product containing citrulline, there's definitely a sweet spot where when you exceed that sweet spot, although you'll get shitloads of nitric oxide and a big pump, you'll then get a big spike in arginase and you'll lose your pump and find it very, very hard to get it back. And for me, that's between kind of 6 and 8 grams. Any more than that, and you start to get a drop off. It has been made difficult because there's been an awful lot of armchair formulators or bedroom supplement reviewers who they've got little to no basis in products. One thing that will also annoy me is when people review products based on the panel without any consideration as to what's the sourcing, how legitimate is the factory that it's produced in. Do we trust that that is what it says it is? I'm not casting aspersions on any particular brand. I think this is more applicable to American products. There's some American products you see, what raw ingredients cost, you see the panel, you see what the product's being sold for, and it just can't be. Sure. No one ever calls that out. They just go, but look at all this numbers. It's got many of the things in.
But I guess as a consumer, like for me, I wouldn't know how much those ingredients cost necessarily unless I did all the research. So
well, and a lot of that information is very hard to get if you're not in the trade. But there's certainly there are certainly products I've seen in the last 2 or 3 months at the price point they're sold at, and I go, well, that can't have in what it says it has in. It's physically impossible. We source the raws directly from the manufacturers of the raws. There's some things that just can't happen. So it's difficult to know exactly where the sweet spot is on those products. The other thing that you'll hear a lot of people shout about is clinical dose.
Yeah.
So they'll say, oh, the clinical dose of, I'll use citrulline again. The clinical dose of citrulline is 8 grams, people will say. Now, it's important to understand that clinical dose isn't like a proven dose that it definitely works best at. It's just a dose that's been used in studies and been shown to be effective.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that more wouldn't work. It doesn't mean that less wouldn't work, but it means that we know that that dose does work. It's also important to understand that a clinical dose will always be determined in a single ingredient trial unless stated otherwise. Now, what I mean by that is that you're not going to get a trial on Vascumax. Yeah. You're going to get a trial on citrulline. You're going to get a trial on arginine. You're going to get a trial on beetroot extract. You're going to get a trial on L-norvaline. All of these trials will be done in isolation. That one ingredient on its own with nothing else. When you start stacking different ingredients, you have to consider the entourage effect, particularly if they're all doing similar jobs. So that's where actually you could have a product that on paper, according to, armchair supplement reviewers, will go, well, this is underdosed because you've got those 3 things and none of them are at their clinical dose. But if all those 3 things are trying to do the same job,
yeah,
they don't necessarily need to be at the clinical dose. Now, that's not me excusing underdosing. A good formulator should know the situations in which that's appropriate and the situations in which it's not, and it does vary. If it's something like a health supplement or a joint supplement, it would be unusual that a higher dose would be worse, although there are exceptions. Cissus quadrilangus is fantastic for joints. At a very, very high dose, it can start to become toxic. Ashwagandha, very, 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 very good product. But at a really, really, really high dose, it can start to become slightly liver toxic, and only slightly, and it would have to be a stupid dose. However, the thing in ashwagandha that can cause liver toxicity is with alanoids. And then I've seen, again from America, because everyone wants to do something different, patented ashwagandhas with very, very high with alanoid concentrations, because with alanoids are part of the active ingredient, not the entire active ingredient. Okay. Not that I think any of these products are dangerous, but just, so there isn't a hard and fast rule. I wish I could give you an answer, say, well, this is how you know that it's the sweet spot. It depends on the ingredient. It depends on what you're trying to do with it. It depends on what ingredients it's with. And that's really where a good formulator, and that's not just me, there are lots of good formulators out there. That's where a really good formulator will earn their keep. And that's where perhaps a poorer formulator will just fuck everything at it that's popular at the moment.
Yeah.
And, anybody who's in the industry, yourself, anyone who spends any time on supplement on Instagram that's into supplements and bodybuilding, could probably pick 5 to 10 of the trendy ingredients at the moment, fuck them all in at a big dose and produce a product. It doesn't mean that it would be optimal, doesn't even mean that it would be effective, but it would probably sell because it would have a load of patented logos on the side of the tub and dosages that people look for.
Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to yourself and when you're trying to, get that perfect formulation of a product, so do you go by an element of the clinical dosage and then you'll trial it for a period of time before you bring it out to the general public?
Yeah, pretty much everything we do is trialed, normally for 3 to 4 months, with the exception of something like creatine.
Yeah.
A single ingredient product. We know that that's going to do what it's going to do, particularly if it's a patented version, so we know the sourcing is good. My basic formula for formulating is I pick the 5 most valid ingredients for the goal. So if it's a joint product or whatever, I'll pick 5 ingredients. Sometimes I end up with more, occasionally I end up with less, but generally I'll try to find 5 ingredients, and then I will start with what is generally accepted as the clinical dose of all 5 of those ingredients. And then I'll just start to move the slider one way or the other. But that's the starting process.
Okay.
And then the end product might end up being very similar to that. It might end up being very different to that. DigestMax, all of the probiotics and enzymes are at the clinical doses, but the fibers are actually woefully underdosed if you were looking for a fiber supplement. However, the fibers in there are actually there as a delivery mechanism for the probiotics.
Okay.
So inulin, probiotics feed on inulin. So you've got inulin in there and probiotics. Probiotics feed on the inulin transports it to the gut. But that's an example of a product where someone who maybe doesn't know why things are perhaps done would look at it and go, well, the probiotics and the enzymes are fine, but actually this part here, the fiber dosing of it is wrong. And it's not. because we of course tried 30 grams, 20 grams, 10 grams, 5 grams, and everything in between. And you do end up finding your sweet spot. Sometimes the first time, sometimes, you know, after 3 months, sometimes it never quite happens. I mean, we've got a meal replacement product that I found a video of the other day. We first trialed it 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it's still not there. I can make a really good product if you want to pay 100 quid for 30 servings of a mass gainer.
Yeah.
And you know what? Actually, kind of £3 a meal for a complete meal isn't that bad, but no one's going to pay it. No one will buy it.
Absolutely. So do you have anything at the back of your head at the moment for future products that you're looking to develop, or is that under?
So at the moment, because of COVID, we've kind of just run things as they are, other than some flavors. We want to expand the flavor base of everything when we come out of lockdown.
Okay.
There is talk of doing a so Clean Kill is our kind of focus productivity product.
Yeah.
And then Neuro is our relaxation chill product. And there is talk about redoing those as a sub brand, so not Strom branded, as a kind of aimed at students as a like study aid and then a chill out thing.
Okay.
So kind of diversifying. My brothers run a business called Pause Trading. They sell dog related paraphernalia all over the country and the world. They're a big e-commerce business, but they also go around and do dog shows. And we've been looking at maybe doing not doing it with them, but assisting them in setting up some products for their market. So dog stuff.
Okay.
So that would be more my brother's thing. I would just ensure the products are good. But in terms of actual Strom bodybuilding products, there are lots of things we could do. There are lots of very kind of specific focused health supplements we could do. I've been playing around with something for my eyes. I had laser eye surgery a couple of years ago, and actually towards the end of the days I get very, very tired eyes now. I struggle to focus. So I've been looking at doing something like that for myself. It's unlikely to ever be a product. I might just ask the factory if they can do me like a run of 50 as a favor. The reason I say that's unlikely to ever become a product is because I don't want to just bring stuff out for the sake of bringing it out. And I think there's a real danger if you bring out too many products for the sake of it, of people feeling like, oh fuck, but I need that and I need that and I need that and I need that, and oh, it's all too much, I'll just leave it, fuck it.
Yeah, okay. Because I tend to find that with, you know, as a consumer myself and being in the industry for a long time, is that people are loyal to a brand.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like that. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I've got OCD and I want all my cupboard to look like it's nice and evenly matched.
Yeah.
So sometimes it frustrates me if I want like a car product, an EAA, you know, a pre-workout, etc. And especially if you're using, you know, distributors rather than going straight, you know, to the company themselves, they won't be in stock of this. They won't, and, you know, before you know it, you're paying a few different postages. So, but I think as like a, you know, an all round in regards to what you do, you've pretty much got everything that you know a bodybuilder like myself would need. Like,
we don't do a plain whey protein. We only do the Veloci whey, and that's because James from Perform is a friend of mine, and he makes a really, really good standard whey protein concentrate. So if you just want a standard whey protein concentrate, I'd rather you buy that, because if I did that, I'd bring nothing new to the market. I would just do what he's done. And so one of my things has always been, I want to bring out stuff that I don't want to bring stuff out if I can already get it from somewhere else.
Yeah, okay. If you can't do it better, what's the point?
Exactly. Now, I know a lot of people have said to me, actually, when you get to a certain point with a brand, you just need to offer everything, so people can get the full range from you. But I'm still not quite there yet on that. I don't want to bring stuff out unless you can do something genuinely different. That's kind of my thing.
Absolutely. But I think the market you're in, you know, I remember going back, it was like, if you took, you know, 10 years ago, if you took a milk thistle tablet, you were healthy, you were sorted. No matter what you did, you had that health box ticks. But I think 2017, I don't know if you disagree, seemed to be the real point where, obviously, you know, with what happened to Rich and Dallas, that then seems to be, okay, everyone's now talking about blood work. When I started bodybuilding, I didn't know what blood work was. Nobody spoke about it.
So for perspective, we've been doing blood work in store. Actually, we did it free to start with for 5 years now.
Yeah.
So you've been able to come to Strom, get blood work for 5 years. So that was, again, something we did. We did, well, I don't think any other shop does blood work in store. The only concern I have with this push towards health, and it is generally better, is, were you taking gear 10 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, so you did your cycle.
Yeah.
Then you come off. because have you done any damage? Oh, fuck knows. But I'll have 12 weeks off and then I'll go back on again.
Yeah.
Now you do your cycle, you do your blood work. Oh, everything's all right. I've been taking my Support Max and actually my liver values are all fine. There's a real danger with products like Support Max that people take it, their blood work is fine, which is good. So they stay on for longer. They take a higher dose. Okay. And we're seeing more and more now of, you know what, my liver values are fine. My kidneys values are fine, but my blood pressure's through the roof. And that starts to cause scarring on my kidneys, which will cause kidney problems further down the line. Or my kidneys are fine, my blood pressure's fine, I've managed that, I've managed this, I've managed the other, I've been doing venesection to keep on top of my red blood cell count. But I've got enlargement of my left ventricle, which you won't know unless you get an echocardiogram.
Yeah.
So a push towards health, definitely, of course, it's a good thing, but it does give a little bit of license for, well, I take all my health supplements, I get my blood work done, everything's fine, how far can I push the envelope? As opposed to, oh, fucking hell, I've maybe pushed it a little bit, I'll step back for a little while, which is what I used to do. You know, I would do a cycle. You didn't have blood work 10 years ago. You don't know quite what damage you've done. You know that you've maybe pushed it a little bit, and you try and be careful for a little while.
Absolutely. So another topic I'm keen to ask whilst you're on the podcast is, you've got a really good community, and your brand has got a really big following. And the loyal following as well. You know, I see it. It's fantastic, and it's great to see that, you know, somebody now, you know, in an industry that's saturated is just up there when it comes to that kind of brand recognition. Yeah. So partly, obviously, I'm interested to know how you did it, but also an element of that is sponsorship, because you know, everyone now with an Instagram account that's got X amount, you know, are ambassadors of this, that, and you know, the sponsorship world has changed dramatically, you know, from what I remember it being back when everyone was sponsored by Muscle Tech in the old days to now, you know, this ambassador thing that seems to be quite diluted, but you do it really well. And so I'm interested to obviously hear about your kind of, your structure for that.
As to how it's happened, I don't know. You know, on paper, with the social issues I have, I shouldn't be someone that's been able to build a community of really cool, supportive people. No idea how that's happened. In terms of athletes, every single athlete we've got was a customer.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. You know, we'll get people messaging and say, "Hey, I'm interested in being an athlete. I really like your brand." You look at this and go, "Well, you've never bought a product from us." Like, it sounds really cringe. If you go back on our YouTube or our Instagram IGTV stuff and watch the stuff from Barbells and Barbecue last year, that really epitomized us as a brand. We're a family. We're all friends. That comes before anything, before business. It's not maybe a good business thing. I don't care. They're my friends. And we're all in it together. You know, I just want them to be better at their sport, to do better, to get the results they want to get. And the fact that they've all supported me is a little confusing, but it's great. In terms of the actual structure of it from a business perspective, we have a couple of tiers, as it were. Yeah. So you've got your Josh Melees at the top. Yeah. They get whatever they want. We don't charge them. The fact that they choose to. So Josh Melee was a customer for 3 months before he spoke to us about sponsorship. Yeah. And he was spending £300 or £400 a month on all of his supplements. Yeah. And he messaged me and said, "Look, I'm not going to say," he was with a sponsor company before, but he was buying our products. And he was like, "Look, I'm sponsored by so-and-so. I'm on a salary from them, but I feel a bit disingenuous. I use your products. Is there any chance of coming on board?" And we don't pay any of the athletes. And he's like, "No, I'm not bothered about that. I just want to use, you know, bodybuilding is my job. I want to use the best tools for my job."
Absolutely.
And actually, if you go back, you know, Ben Chow used to be one of our athletes. Mr. Sandow was for a while. Yeah. There was a time when pretty much every IFBB pro in the country was using Support Max. Jamie Johal was, Ant Bales was, Kylie Thornton still does. And they were all buying it full price, which is why I get really confused by new brands coming along and throwing free shit at people like it's Skittles. You know what? If you've got the margins in your product to do that, I'd start to get a little concerned. Like, we don't have the margin to just give shit away. So all these guys were using the products and they were all paying for it. You know, Ben Chow used to buy like 10 tubs of Support Max and 10 tubs of Neuro a month, or not a month, every 2 or 3 months for him and Luke. And then we had our conversation, said, "Look, I'd rather just give it to you because, you know, you guys are fucking cool. And like, as a bodybuilding fan, I get a wide on over that."
Yeah, absolutely.
and they very much took me into their fold, and I got to train with them, and I think we became friends, which is awesome. So you guys like your Josh Melee, Ben Chow when he was with us, whatever, just whatever you want, guys, it's on us. But we don't pay athletes, and I've no intention of paying athletes. I know what massive companies pay their athletes, but I also know what their products cost to produce, and they've got the margin to do it. And you know what?
Yeah.
It's a wicked business model. You know, if you've got, naming no names, if you've got a brand that's doing over 1 million orders a year, and you've got enough margin in your products to do a half price sale every other week, then you can afford to pay your athletes.
Yeah.
We're not that guy. We're still a small family business at the end of the day. So the next tier down from that are our regular sponsored athletes. That's most of the guys. Yeah. And they get £100 a month worth of stuff for free.
Yeah.
And then anything they want over that, they pay at kind of the wholesale cost.
Okay.
And those guys choose to buy a load of stuff every month on top of what they get as their athlete orders. And then we have a few kind of affiliates underneath that who get to buy what they want at cost, and we'll support them. And the idea is that those guys will prove their worth, and then will eventually get to be a full sponsored athlete. The key thing for me with our athletes is that not a single one of them, they all have codes for free shipping. We don't do discounts because we're a brand. We're not a retailer primarily, we're a brand. If you want a discount, I'd suggest you go to a retailer. They might give you a 10% off discount code. But if I do that, I'm undercutting the guys that are spending 20, 30 grand a month for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm going to support the other retailers first, because I used to be another retailer. And if I bought a load of stock from USN and then USN did an offer on it, I'd be pissed.
Yeah.
So none of the athletes are targeted on sales. They're not on like a commission basis, none of that. And they're not on any kind of obligation. You don't need to do X number of posts. I don't expect you to do anything. In fact, if you have a product, if you try a product from ours and you don't like it, say. If you use products from other brands, say. Yeah. If, you know what, our pre-workouts are all compliant. If they're not strong enough for you, say. Because the moment that you're dishonest to your following is the moment that you're no use to me as an athlete.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of an unusual setup. I think most of these brands do commission bases for things. The guys who we work with, they want to be a part of this family, and they just want the best tools for their job. Absolutely.
So do you have any kind of strategy in regards to, okay, I've got like, you know, your Josh Maleys for the bodybuilding world, you know, this is the kind of following he attracts. Do you then have that for strongman, for powerlifting, for like the female side of it?
So we've got Reach Forward for powerlifting.
Yeah.
So he's one of the best squatters in the world. He is one of, if not the best, British powerlifter on the scene at the moment. For strongman, we had Ben Brunning, Badger. He was going to World Strongest Man and stuff. He's sadly been injured. We also used to sponsor Tom Saltman. But Badger's been injured. He's been out for a little while. I think we've got to a point now where actually enough people who are, there are several top strongmen who I won't name because they're sponsored by other companies. We still get this with a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of athletes, bodybuilders, strongmen, powerlifters who are sponsored by other companies who put orders in on our website every month.
Okay.
Because they appreciate the value of the product, you know.
Yeah. That's just fantastic, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and you know what? That's more worthwhile than any paid bullshit sponsorship you can do.
Absolutely.
Because if you're like an elite level strongman or powerlifter, this is your whole life. And if you choose to buy the products, it's because you know you want the best.
Yeah. Perfect.
So no strategy, very little. I just kind of wing it.
Okay. Well, it's working. Keep winging it.
Yeah.
Perfect. So in regards like long-term vision for Strom as obviously a brand, like, do you have any kind of goals like 5, 10, 15 years onwards, or are you just going to kind of organically see how it grows and just enjoy the ride?
Like the goal initially was to not have to work for someone else and to like earn what I used to earn at Sky TV, which was minimum wage plus a drink.
Okay.
So I kind of take every day as a blessing at the moment. It sounds a bit gay, but if it all ended tomorrow, it's been amazing. Like I've achieved far more than I ever expected to do. We were planning on breaking Europe this year, or last year, sorry. We were going to do FIBO and stuff, and then COVID ruined it all, and actually Brexit's been a complete fucking shit show. And then we were going to do America this year. We've probably pushed all that back by a year or so. We're still waiting to see what happens with the COVID thing. America's difficult because the only way really to do America is to get stuff manufactured in the States.
Yeah.
Now in the UK, I was very well known on the boards and things as being generally, I guess, a bit knowledgeable and helpful. 4, 5, 6 years ago. So when we brought out products, there was already that kind of there was a degree of credibility.
Okay.
If I were to take the brand over to America and get it produced in America, because trying to import products for the States is a nightmare, there are two things. One, I don't entirely trust the quality of American manufacture. Not entirely, but at the same time, I've spoken to factories in America before about getting products made, and they've said things like, and I quote, "What do you want on the label and what do you want in the product?"
Jesus. Which
just makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, you won't get a British factory saying stuff like that. And it's much less regulated over there. The issue, I guess, with America is that as far as America's concerned, who the fuck is he?
Yeah.
Like, I'm no one over there. I don't really know anyone. I've got a few friends over there, but I haven't got that kind of ready to go network of people who trust me.
Is that where you could potentially look at bringing on an American athlete to kind of represent the brand? Would that be something you'd look at? Yeah. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's something, because obviously Ben's still a friend of mine. It's something I've spoken to about with Mr. Chow.
Yeah.
But he's now moving in much bigger circles. So that's not really an option. Yeah, it's something that we would look at. I would love to get established in America, because there's a lot about America that I'd like.
Yeah.
The goal really, I guess, would be to get this to a point where I was about to say to get to a point where it runs itself, but I'd be instantly bored if that happened.
Yeah.
So just keep doing what we're doing. FitX is going to become a huge focus for me as a businessman.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to swiftly move on to after that, because obviously you've got a part in FitX, which is great. And also you've got the Strom Classic as well, which is going to be, you've obviously done strongman before. Is this the first bodybuilding show you've actually
I've competed?
Promoted? Yeah, you've competed, but have you promoted?
Yeah. So we've been involved with bodybuilding shows and back end organising stuff. I'm going to be the compere for this one, so that's going to be a first. I'm a little nervous about that. I quite like the sound of my own voice, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
But the Strom Classic is nearly full in terms of registrations.
Good.
So not a bad way to start.
Absolutely. And then is this something you see that you're going to do long term? Are you going to continue to grow the Strom Classic?
Yeah, well, so the Strom Classic is going to become a show within the FitX Bodybuilding Federation, which I again have a share in. So there's going to be the FitX Expos, which will be once a year. It might become twice a year if it goes really well, but once a year. And then there is the FitX Federation, which is going to be 6 bodybuilding shows this year, COVID willing.
Yeah.
And then next year it will expand to probably 10 or 12. And then that will hopefully be a good standalone federation that will feed into the expos as well.
Absolutely. I've got my kind of eyes pinned on the Northampton show. I think is going to be my first show this year. So I look forward to that. So I was going to look at, because I remember the Body Power. I always kind of wanted to compete there because I thought it'd be quite cool with, you know, the audience and stuff. So obviously I've got a trade stand now at the FitX. Yeah. So I was going to do the Strom Classic, but now I'm like, oh, I can't really do the two, to be fair. That's a little bit unfair. It's probably doing a bit too much at once.
Yeah. No, the Strom Classic is looking mega. It's fantastic how much everyone has supported us and how everyone's got behind it.
Yeah.
Because you know what, there was an expo in London. Oh, what was it called? It wasn't called FitCon.
I competed at FitCon.
Yeah, it was shit, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. They massively bigged it up, and I remember like going there. I took some of my family there, and I remember like Project AD had a stand there, and then other than that, there was a couple. Because I remember, going, oh, we can make a doubt of it. I thought it was going to be mini Body Power. They really bigged it up, but
I worked there for another brand, and I spent most of the time talking to Robert Frank.
Okay, yeah.
The little angry guy.
Yeah.
Because we were just stood about with nothing to do, quite frankly.
Yeah, there wasn't that many people there, to be fair. And then the way
that is an expo that had far more money and far bigger brands and far more influential people behind it than FitX. And nobody went. And I think part of that was because it was in London.
Yeah. Which
just if you're in London, great. If you're not from London, it's just a fucking nightmare. No one who's not from London. If you're from London, guys, this might come as news to you. But if you're not from London, no one wants to go to London. It's a strange and scary place. So the location didn't really work. And other than that, I don't know why it didn't work, but it just didn't. Whereas FitX now, even if nobody else booked, we would still be bigger than FitCon ended up being.
But I think the difference is like, who was the face behind the FitCon? Who organised it? Who was?
Well, that's the thing. It was a corporate thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, and I really competed there. Whereas I always say that people need a face to a business to get a proper buy-in, and I think that's why you do so successful in your business, because you're there all the time. You're very present in your business, and I think with what you know, Darren's doing, and yourself, and a few of the others with FitX.
Yeah.
Like people buy into genuinely nice people, and that's what people have. Like, people buy from people. Okay, like that is so powerful. You know, you can spend all this money on marketing and advertising as much as you want, but nothing is going to sell as well as a person. And I think that's why it's working so well for yourself, and obviously with the FitX, is because people buy into you, so they want to buy your products, they want to come to your events because they know it's going to be good.
We're almost numb to traditional advertising now. You know, if you see a flashy advert, you almost deliberately don't read it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you see something that looks kind of homemade, it's a little bit like porn. If it looks homemade, you're more likely to pay attention.
Absolutely.
Almost exactly the same.
Oh, dude, that's good. I think that's good. Perfect. Well, I think that has been an absolutely fantastic podcast, mate. Like, I'm sitting here just kind of listening to some of the stuff that you're saying.
Christ, yeah, we've gone on a little bit, haven't we?
Yeah, exactly. You don't realize when you kind of get when you get talking how long it's going for. I know you're very, very busy, so I don't want to hold you up for much longer. And soon I'm going to have 2 crazy children charging through this door any second.
How old?
I've got a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old.
4-year-old's fun.
Yeah, the 9-year-old I don't see. Yeah, she'll come in. How's your day at school? Fine. Bye. Upstairs. Roadblocks. iPad. I'll see you at tea time. A 4-year-old is like a Tasmanian devil. He gets my energy. Lucy always says, "This is your fault. This is your fault. This is you." Literally, like everything is just like Tasmanian devil, just into everything, just very hyperactive. So, you know,
well, I will leave you with that.
I'll
leave you with that because I've just looked at the notifications on my phone and I need to crack on with that.
Not a problem.
Thank you very much for having me on. Let me know when it's live and I'll post
it. Absolutely. Perfect. I appreciate your time, mate. That was great.
You're more than welcome. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, mate. Take care. Bye-bye.